I made a video about detransitioning because I detransitioned, and it inadvertently became one of the most popular videos on this channel. I suddenly, overnight, became like a very miniature, snack-sized spokesperson for the broader detransition community. And since then, I have analyzed the trans community and the broader subject of gender as I've come to at least get somewhere closer resembling an understanding of myself. This has all been very rigorous and uncomfortable and has required a lot of introspection. But I think to a lot of people who watched that detransition video, they may not have said it, but in their minds, it was kind of an inevitability that I would come around later in the future and then go, well, okay, I'm trans again. But I think that means something radically different now from what it did when I had initially transitioned. Because if you listen to the rhetoric that I used in the wake of my social and especially medical transition, I may not have said this on my channel because I was not really making videos at this time, but I saw this as like this broad sweeping transformation. Like I was going to fundamentally restructure myself and the way I interpret and experience the world. Something that I don't think people are meant to go through or experience. Like, of course, that would be an uncomfortable and disorienting thing, and, you know, perhaps might never stop being uncomfortable, because that's just, like, that's not how people work. What I've come to realize is that the population of people who's, like, half or more than half of the planet that we call female, that is a population of people that's incredibly broad and diverse, and you cannot chalk them up to a set of stereotypes. You can't essentialize them in that way. I feel like there's this pressure felt by many trans people to embody the most essentialistic elements of femininity in order to feel like their dysphoria is alleviated. But I think that has far more to do with the society that is discriminating against them, that is telling them to conform, than with like the actual nature of gender, or perhaps the actual nature of their dysphoria. And in fact, this was actually something that I touched on in that video. In that video, I said how I felt the need to conform to all of these really arbitrary stereotypes, but the reality was, and I did not realize this when I initially made that detransition video, I never had to do that. Maybe I felt like I had to, because I was in a deeply conservative and dangerous environment that was not supportive of different forms of gender nonconformity. I felt like I had to be like a gigapassoid in every sense of the word in order to, like, you know, even remotely deserve some kind of acceptance, when it's like, that's just total nonsense, you know? To take kind of transphobic, like, self-hating terms that, like, the 4chan board LGBT uses, for example, I could be like a boy motor, like Hun or whatever, in a more liberal part of the country, and it would be substantially less dangerous than where I was at the time that I was, you know, experiencing problems with discrimination and violence due to my gender identity. There were, like, multiple aspects, really big aspects of myself in terms of how I want to express myself, how I intuitively do, and my presentation, my interests, where, like, it felt like I could not square those things with this, like, hyper-essentialized notion of femininity that I was trying to chase after and embody, that I couldn't embody, that was, like, either impossible for me or impossible without, like, a significant amount of suffering. It's only now that I've come to realize, like, I can just be whatever, like, if my intuition, my desire has something that, like, it wants to have fulfilled, then I can just do that. Like, I can simultaneously wear woman's clothes, voice train, and, pick a more feminine hairstyle, put on makeup and so on, do my nails, and also like heavy metal music and video games, and like write weird videos on the internet about, like, I don't know, hitting the Benjamin in Flanders fields. Like, people are just people at the end of the day. Like, transness for me is ultimately just an expression of my own bodily autonomy. It's me making a decision about how I want to exist in the world, and how I most feel comfortable. Like, I look at images of myself from the height of my transition when I made the most progress, and, like, again and again and again, I just desperately wish I could go back to that. Even though I was also kind of like a boy motor, and there were, like, huge improvements I could have made on my appearance, like, it's undeniable that I felt substantially more comfortable with myself when I was presenting like that and existing like that. That doesn't mean that I have to be, like, the ultimate fucking, like, HSTS, like, I'm trying to think, like, what are these other, like, kind of self-hating terms that, like, a lot of people use? Like, I'm trying to demonstrate something here by using this language, by the way. Like, there's, like, a genre of trans person that is viewed to be, like, undeniably trans, and that for that reason they're valid and that other people aren't. But I think, like, by looking to those stereotypes and asking yourself, like, am I valid? Like, you're already missing the forest for the trees, because you're valid just by existing. Like, no one needs to validate you by recognizing your validity and existence as a person. You can do that yourself. In fact, the universe has done that for you, because that recognition, that approval is not needed. I think, like, it wasn't so much a matter of me being deeply uncomfortable with femininity or womanhood. It was me being deeply uncomfortable with my relationship to it, with myself. I wanted to be this kind of person that I wasn't. Gender has nothing to do with it. I wanted to be a kind of person that I was not, because I felt like that kind of person embodied femininity and womanhood better than who I am does. What I didn't realize is I can be feminine, I can take hormones, I can change my presentation, and I can still be the same person I am. What transitioning is about is not about this radical transformation where every aspect of your life suddenly changes. What it's about is being more authentic, and I seem to have been thinking in such black and white terms that I could only be, like, radically inauthentic in this direction or the other, when really there was always a third option. It was just to embrace, whatever my intuitive desires are. And it just so happens that my intuitive desires align with, and have aligned for, like, most of my life with transness. And so, of course, I had friends trying to pink pill me and push me into being trans, because it was, like, incredibly fucking obvious that I'm trans, and that I was saying that I wanted that. When you're directly saying that you want that, of course you have that going on. I think when I had detransitioned, I was trying to look for, like, every possible ideological or social or psychological reason for why I possibly wasn't ever transgender. But I don't think someone changes their whole gender, and medically at that, for as long as I did, and had these thoughts in their head for as many years as I did, without it being the case. Ultimately, people who aren't girls don't want to be girls. Like, I don't know how else to put this. Like, just do whatever you want to do. It's morphological freedom. There was another thing I wanted to mention as well, was this topic of hormones. I think there are options that still exist for me on that front that I simply haven't tried, because both of the testosterone blockers that I had tried caused like significant side effects for me, and I think the strain that estrogen orally was putting on my liver was like a lot. It was making me feel sick, and I think I probably had a hormonal imbalance, which like that can really fuck you up. I think if I had consistent blood tests and was being monitored by a doctor and was getting estrogen injections just without a testosterone blocker, it's entering directly in my bloodstream, and I don't have to deal with like issues with metabolizing it, and it having to be processed through the liver. I think I could be able to experience the feminization that I want, that I think makes me feel more comfortable with my appearance, without dealing with all of the side effects that I complained about before, which were very real and very big. So it's kind of to be continued on that one. I feel like even if I go for that and it like radically messes up, like it just doesn't work out, I would still present in a feminine way, like I would still want to do that, and I would still try to put in as much effort as I could into like other routes of getting there. So yeah, I guess I'm just stating the obvious for people who are trans or know a lot about gender who are in my audience. I'm not so far off from you, I guess. I suppose I've come out again.